Hello students, today we are going to discuss about educational research part 1. Introduction. It has been estimated that knowledge almost doubles after every 8 years. You may wonder why it is so and how it happens. In fact, human curiosity is the main reason for increase in knowledge. This knowledge is what may be called human commonwealth. It knows no boundaries. People from all countries use this commonwealth and contribute to it. The present age has rightly been called the age of knowledge. Knowledge generation is today as important as communicating it and helping others construct it for themselves. This is true of education as well. The second major reason for creating knowledge can be attributed to the problems that face us in various fields, including education. Today, various countries are in competition with each other to acquire more knowledge and to generate it. This is because knowledge has truly become power. The most advanced countries in today's world are those that have a strong system of generating knowledge through research and development activities. New knowledge leads to new technologies, and new technologies sell because they fuel further development. They help us solve our problems, be these in the field of education or in other areas of human life. The third reason responsible for generating knowledge is because of the decisions we take in our lives, especially in our professional life. Taking quick and right decisions has never been easy, but they who are more informed have always an edge over others. This holds good in education too. India is eager to improve the education system and make it more responsive to the needs and aspirations of its people so that the country may progress and prosper. Unless our education system generates knowledge to help solve our problems, our education system cannot be a top-class system. If we want to improve our higher education, the task should start at least 15 years earlier at the level of primary education. This is because education is cumulative and no nation can build a superstructure on weak foundations. This task of generation of knowledge in the field of education is carried out through educational research. In this unit, we shall examine what is knowledge and what are the various purposes of research. Later on, we will study about the nature and scope of educational research and also about different types of studies in educational research. Knowledge, nature and types. What is knowledge? It is not easy to define knowledge. Most dictionary definitions of knowledge do not do justice to the concept of knowledge. The word knowledge has been derived from the verb to know. Loosely defined, knowledge consists of all that a person knows and believes to be true. This would be called personal knowledge. Personal knowledge differs from one person to another. This is because much of one's personal knowledge may be unexamined, untested, and therefore subjective. In the context of research, when we use the word knowledge, we refer to scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge is well tried out, examined, and tested, which means it is validated knowledge. It is scientific knowledge which is considered and accepted by experts to be true. Knowledge, in this sense, represents the entire content of our intellectual heritage. It is this knowledge which education tries to pass on to succeeding generations. In spite of what has been said above, we should remember that the concept of knowledge expresses our standards, ideals, and tastes about the rightful exercise of cognitive skills because collectively they express our conceptions of truth and evidence. Knowledge is, therefore, concerned with how we come to know our approved standards of competence in performance, in inquiry, and in criticism. The concept of knowledge has been associated with what are called philosophical traditions. These are primarily three: the rationalistic, the empirical, and the pragmatic. According to the rationalistic tradition, knowledge is derived through deductive reasoning based on self-evident basic truths. Knowledge, according to rationalists, does not strictly depend upon experience. It depends instead on reasoning. Rationalists consider mathematics to be the ideal science. Mathematicians do not conduct experiments and surveys. Yet, through reasoning, they arrive at truth that does not depend on experience for its confirmation. According to the empirical tradition, all natural phenomena can be known only through experience and not through deductive reasoning or intuition. Empiricists assume that our mind has the power to compare, combine, analyze, and generalize upon whatever is provided to it by experience. They also believe that the mind possesses the ability to perform logical operations upon concepts. The empirical tradition emphasizes learning from experience through accurate observation, reason-based generalization, and willingness to revise laws that are not supported by events related to a particular phenomenon. Pragmatic tradition. The pragmatic tradition emphasizes the experimental character of the process of acquiring knowledge. The pragmatic tradition stresses that merely carrying out logical operations on basic truths is not enough. One needs to go beyond the generalizations about observed phenomena. Pragmatists are in favor of experimentation based on controlled observation of environment and events. The process of generating and testing knowledge is, according to Dewey, the process of trying and undergoing, trying an idea in practice, and learning from observation of the consequences of the trial. Pragmatists are of the view that the mind has the capacity for active generation of ideas so that the problem faced by the individual can be resolved. Pragmatists are in favor of active and imaginative theorizing provided it leads to experimentation. The outcomes of the experimentation should give direction to imaginative theorizing. Types of knowledge. Declarative knowledge. According to Biggs in 1999, knowledge is of many kinds. Chief among these are declarative or propositional knowledge. This knowledge refers to knowing about things or knowing what. Declarative knowledge is generated by research. It is not solely based on one's personal experience. Our knowledge about the solar system, about how different seasons are formed, how children learn, how humans process information, all these and much more are part of declarative knowledge. It is also known as public knowledge because it is tested through rules of evidence that make it verifiable, replicable, and logically consistent. Functioning knowledge. Functioning knowledge is concerned with how to do things, and it involves performance based on understanding. Functioning knowledge is strongly rooted in declarative knowledge. Unless one is strong in declarative knowledge and understands what action or actions can be performed through it, it cannot become functioning knowledge. In other words, declarative knowledge, when put to use for problem solving or for performing theory-based tasks, becomes functioning knowledge. Procedural knowledge. Then comes procedural knowledge, which is essentially skill-based. It, however, does not have the high rigor of declarative knowledge. Procedural knowledge goes hand in hand with appropriate competencies in a particular area. Procedural knowledge is largely based on performance of right action in the correct sequence. Conditional knowledge. There is yet another type of knowledge, that is conditional knowledge, which is a combination of both procedural and high-level declarative knowledge. It informs us of what one should do under given circumstances, why and under what conditions one should do this and not that. Sources of knowledge. It is natural for human beings to seek answers to the problems they face. They try to increase their knowledge throughout their lives. For this, they rely upon the following sources of knowledge. Experience. Almost every day, we learn from our experience. When we see the sun rise from the east every morning, we conclude that the sun rises every day in the east. Similarly, we learn through our experience to distinguish between things that are sweet, sour, or bitter, very hot or very cold. While our experience serves as a useful guide in everyday life, it is quite fallible in many situations. Social customs and traditions. Social customs and traditions represent the wisdom of generations that have preceded us. When we do not know what to do in certain situations, we often rely upon our customs and traditions. However, most customs and traditions do not change according to new knowledge, and therefore, quite often, they become undependable and out of tune with the spirit of the time. For example, the traditional treatment for typhoid and infertility are entirely unscientific and therefore ineffective. Thus, customs and traditions may not have any scientific basis and may be rooted in make-believe or even superstition. Reasoning. Reasoning is a more dependable means of reaching and establishing truth. Reasoning is of two types: deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is associated with Socrates. It is syllogistic. In a syllogism, we have a major premise, a minor premise, and an inference which is warranted by the major premise. For example, man is mortal. It is a major premise. Ram is a man, minor premise. Ram is mortal, inference or the deduction. In deductive reasoning, we start with a generalization and apply it to a specific case and deduce an inference. In inductive reasoning, we start with a specific event and make many more observations, and on the basis of the commonality in a given set of observations, we formulate a generalization. Thus, while in deductive reasoning we start with a generalization and apply it to a specific instance, in inductive reasoning we proceed in the reverse order. We start with a particular event or an instance and conclude with a generalization. The scientific method was formulated in order to avoid the defects of deductive reasoning as well as inductive reasoning. The scientific method is the method of research. In spite of the variety, research has a typical set of procedures based on the scientific method, which is also known as the hypothetico-deductive paradigm. According to researchers, the scientific method consists of the following sequence of steps. Step 1. A theory exists about phenomenon. Step 2. The researcher identifies and researches questions in the context of the problem. Step 3. The researcher formulates a research hypothesis based on the theory. The research hypothesis is a statement of the possible relationship between two or more variables and it is testable. Step 4. The researcher describes the specific procedures, that is, operations by which the variables are defined and actions performed on them. The researcher formulates a null hypothesis on the research hypothesis, which can be tested statistically. The researcher then develops an appropriate research design, that is, a plan of action for testing the null hypothesis. Step 5. The researcher conducts the study according to the research design and collects the data. Step 6. The null hypothesis is tested by the researcher using the data collected through the study. Step 7. The null hypothesis may be rejected or accepted on the basis of statistical testing. If the null hypothesis is accepted, the theory is confirmed. If the null hypothesis is rejected, then the research hypothesis may have to be reformulated and tested again in order to solve the research problem. For this, steps 2 to 7 are repeated. Nature and conceptions of social reality. From the earliest times, human beings have been trying to understand the world in which they are born, grow up, and live their lives. This world can be divided into two parts. The physical environment, which consists of the natural environment, that is, various objects and life forms, and objects created by human beings as they become more civilized. These are also known as artifacts. Point 2. The social environment, which is the chief characteristic of human society. Social reality is the name given to the social environment. Growing up in a particular social and environment shapes our lifestyles, attitudes, beliefs, value systems, and worldview. These beliefs and values differ from one society to another and change over time within the same society. For example, the beliefs of an Eskimo and an Indian would be very different from that of one another, and each would feel that his view and attitude is correct. The manner in which we look upon the social reality around us determines our conception of social reality. For centuries, human beings believed that our social reality is no different from our physical reality. It was also believed that social reality, like our physical reality, exists whether we are a part of it or not. The study of our social reality has given birth to the social sciences, just as the study of the physical reality has given birth to the natural sciences. Those who believe that the essential nature of social reality and social sciences is the same as that of physical reality and physical sciences try to discover and formulate universal laws in social sciences, just as a physical scientist would try to discover and formulate universal laws about the physical world. This conception of social reality would be called the objectivist's conception. Opposed to the objectivist's view of social reality is the subjectivist's conception. According to this view, even though as animate objects, human beings may appear alike as humans, as individuals, they differ from each other. The human beings, according to the subjectivist's view, live in two worlds at the same time, the physical world and the social world. Their behavior in the social world is neither determined nor explained by the laws of the physical world. The social reality is not static. It changes over time and is in a state of flux. Let us now examine how the objectivist's conception and the subjectivist's conception of social reality differ from one another. In fact, these two views of social reality are based on a number of different assumptions. These assumptions are essentially related to the following four questions. Number 1. What is the essential nature of the social phenomena? Number 2. What is the nature of knowledge? How is it acquired? Number 3. What is human nature? Is it predetermined or is it characterized by free will? Number 4. What methods should we use in order to study social phenomena and human nature? The objectivists believe that reality exists independent of human beings. The world does not need an observer who may observe it and say that it exists. The subjectivists believe that the world is the result of human thought and consciousness. In other words, it is created by the human mind. About knowledge and how it is acquired, the objectivists believe that knowledge is comparable to a tangible object. It can be passed from one person to another just like an object. Therefore, it can be acquired from others if one does not possess. The subjectivists believe that knowledge has to be experienced and one constructs it for oneself. Hence, knowledge, according to this view, is subjective, personal, and unique. The objectivists believe that human nature is predetermined. Human beings are no different from other forms of life and they respond to various objects and events in a mechanical manner. The subjectivists, on the other hand, are of the view that human nature is characterized by consciousness and freedom of choice. So far as the question of methodology for study of social phenomena and human behavior is concerned, the objectivists emphasize that discovering universal laws that explain human behavior should be the task of research. The differences among human beings are not as important as their similarities. The subjectivists are of the view that research methods used for social phenomena and human behavior should emphasize what is unique about them. The focus should be on understanding and explaining the particular and not the universal. It is hardly surprising that these two views of social reality recommend the use of methods of research which are very different from one another. The objectivists recommend the use of experimental method in which human behavior is observed in carefully controlled situations. The subjectivists, on the other hand, recommend the use of ethnographic methods wherein human behavior is observed in its natural, uncontrolled environment. Before I wrap up this session, here is a conclusion to what we have studied today. Conclusion. In this chapter, we learnt about the concept, types and sources of knowledge. We also discussed about the nature and conceptions of social reality. To sum it up, empirical knowledge is propositional knowledge that is obtained through experience. Pragmatic knowledge includes socio-linguistic and functional knowledge. Declarative knowledge is the type of knowledge that is, by its very nature, expressed in declarative sentences or indicative prepositions. This distinguishes descriptive knowledge from what is commonly known as know-how or procedural knowledge, that is, the knowledge of how and especially how best to perform some task, and knowing of or knowledge by acquaintance, the knowledge of something's existence. The central concept of social construction of reality is that persons and groups interacting in a social system create, over time, concepts or mental representations of each other's actions, and that these concepts eventually become habituated into reciprocal roles played by the actors in relation to each other. When these roles are made available to other members of society to enter into and play out, the reciprocal interactions are said to be institutionalized. In the process of this institutionalization, meaning is embedded in society. Knowledge and people's conception and belief of what reality is becomes embedded in the institutional fabric of society. Reality is, therefore, said to be socially constructed.